you can't describe the feeling of being really inside of a monument that has just been discovered and is just literally emerging out of the ground.
For centuries, the fate of Rome's fabled Ninth Legion, Legio IX Hispana, has captivated historians, archaeologists, and amateur sleuths alike. Their mysterious disappearance has inspired books, films, and countless academic debates. Stationed in Britannia during the height of Roman imperial power, the Ninth Legion was one of the Empire's most seasoned military units, with a distinguished combat record stretching back to Julius Caesar. Then, suddenly, sometime in the early 2nd century CE, it vanished from historical records. No definitive explanation ever emerged. But now, with recent archaeological discoveries and re-evaluation of overlooked historical data, the mystery appears to have been finally solved, and the truth is more shocking than anyone could have anticipated. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. The unraveling of this ancient enigma began not with a dramatic excavation in the wilds of northern Britain, but with a routine scan of long-buried Roman military dispatches unearthed near Eboracum, modern-day York. Among the fragments was an encrypted communication, presumably sent to the Central Roman Command in the early 120 SCE. When deciphered, it referenced a coordinated series of engagements with an unnamed tribal coalition far beyond Hadrian's eventual wall. This suggested that the Ninth Legion had not merely vanished, but had been deliberately sent into an expedition so perilous that their odds of return were slim from the outset. Contrary to earlier theories which suggested the Legion was disbanded, transferred, or defeated in a single catastrophic battle, this new evidence painted a very different picture. The Ninth was selected for a classified and highly experimental campaign. Its objective was not to conquer territory in the conventional sense, but to neutralize a threat the Roman Senate considered existential, not from a rival empire or even a rebellious chieftain, but from what sources described obliquely as the Skyfire people. Most historians had always dismissed such language as metaphorical or symbolic, perhaps referring to northern religious zealots or Celtic mysticism. However, recent interdisciplinary studies suggest that the Romans might have genuinely encountered phenomena beyond their comprehension. Strange lights in the sky, electromagnetic disturbances, and atmospheric anomalies that seemed to coalesce near Caledonian mountain passes. The campaign plan was daring, a split-force maneuvering tactic designed to encircle this mysterious force. What made it extraordinary was the nature of their chosen enemy. Local tribes in the far north, once considered disorganized and perpetually at war with each other, had reportedly unified for the first time in recorded history. But this unification wasn't due to a charismatic warlord or divine prophecy. Interrogated prisoners spoke of the voice from the high stones, an otherworldly presence that issued commands and promised dominion over the southern lands if its acolytes remained loyal. The Ninth Legion, informed of these strange reports, was dispatched not to fight men alone, but to uproot what the Roman Senate quietly feared was a cult with supernatural backing. Initial reports from the Ninth were routine: fortifications built, scouts deployed, resistance crushed. Then the messages grew erratic. Timetables became distorted. References were made to soldiers seeing doubles of themselves across the battlefield, or losing days during routine marches. Accounts grew stranger, culminating in a final missive that described the disintegration of physical reality itself: horses vanishing mid-gallop, projectiles hanging in mid-air, and voices emerging from solid rock. No further word came after that. At the heart of this revelation was a newly discovered Roman outpost deep within the Cairngorms of Scotland. Unlike other Roman ruins, it was untouched by time, not in the sense of preservation, but in a more disturbing way. The site appeared to have been frozen mid-use. Personal items, weapons, even food trays remained where they had been abandoned. Skeletons were sparse, but those found showed no signs of trauma. It was as though the soldiers had simply ceased to exist. There were no signs of withdrawal, no traces of a besieging army, and no natural disaster markers. The unit had effectively evaporated, leaving behind the hushed echo of something profoundly unnatural. The implications were staggering. For decades, Rome's obsession with conquest was understood as earthly, driven by politics, economics, and sheer hunger for dominance. But the Ninth's final campaign suggests a hidden chapter of Roman policy, one where imperial power intersected with the paranormal. What else had the Senate known? Were there other legions deployed under similar pretenses whose records were quietly scrubbed? And more importantly, what was the nature of the force the Ninth encountered? New interpretations of local legends in the Highlands, long considered folklore, are being reconsidered in this new context. Tales of shimmering warriors who arrived in a flash of lightning, of time turning back on itself, and of stone gods who whispered commands all line up disturbingly well with what the Romans described. These weren't metaphors. They were eyewitness accounts, filtered through the lens of ancient perception and cultural mythology. The Highland tribes, far from being confused or irrational, may have been the only people who understood how to coexist, or at least survive, in proximity to whatever this force was. This also forces a reevaluation of Hadrian's Wall. Built shortly after the Ninth's disappearance, it has long been interpreted as a defensive structure meant to hold back rebellious northern tribes. But if Rome believed there was a literal boundary where reality itself became unstable, the wall's true purpose becomes more ominous. It wasn't just keeping barbarians out, it was keeping something else in. Adding to the mystery is the peculiar fact that the Ninth Legion's standard, the aquila, or eagle, was never recovered. The Roman military regarded the aquila as sacred, a talisman as much as a banner. Losing it was considered a stain on honor that entire legions would die to prevent. For one to simply vanish without even an attempt at recovery suggests a scenario Rome deemed too dangerous to pursue further. Whatever happened in the north, the empire chose to forget it, erase it, and construct a narrative of disbandment or reassignment as a historical smokescreen. But the ghosts of the Ninth refused to stay buried. In recent years, environmental changes in the region, including sudden magnetic fluctuations and anomalies in satellite imaging, have drawn attention back to those haunted highlands. Combined with the new archaeological discoveries and recovered Roman documents, a cohesive narrative has finally emerged, one in which a hyper-rational empire was brought face to face with something it could neither explain nor defeat. The erasure of the Ninth wasn't negligence, it was deliberate, a cover-up to protect not just the people of Rome, but reality as they knew it. One of the most compelling pieces of this new understanding comes from the recovery of an obsidian tablet inscribed with Latin script found in what appears to have been the Ninth's forward command station. Unlike typical Roman stonework, this slab bore no military symbols and seemed instead to serve a ceremonial purpose. The Latin was fractured, looping, and oddly recursive, as though written in a trance or influenced by something beyond logic. A translation effort conducted by a multidisciplinary team revealed that the text did not record commands or a battle plan, but rather a warning. It referred to the place where the sky forgets its name, and advised any who found the marker to burn the path behind them and forget the light they saw. If this sounds like mysticism, that's precisely why it was long dismissed. But now, placed alongside the empirical evidence, the untouched encampment, the unusual disappearances, and the anomalous field readings, the eerie message reads more like a practical guideline. The Ninth Legion had crossed into a zone where conventional physics may have broken down, where time and space contorted under unknown forces. They were Rome's last gamble to understand it, and they failed. The recovery and reinterpretation of these events are not just a boon to historical scholarship. They open uncomfortable questions about the present. If such a force existed then, has it truly vanished? Or has it simply gone dormant? Satellite data collected over the Cairngorms continues to record sporadic electromagnetic pulses of unknown origin. The ground there is oddly resistant to deep penetration radar. Even wildlife behaves differently near the heart of the region, avoiding certain pathways as if guided by ancestral memory. Modern parallels are being drawn to unexplained phenomena in other parts of the world. Mysterious disappearances in the Siberian tundra, reports of silent storms in the Amazon, areas in the Australian outback where compasses spin uncontrollably. Could Rome's Ninth Legion have been one of history's earliest documented encounters with something non-human, something that intersects with our dimension only at rare intervals and in specific geographies? If so, the Ninth's fate becomes not just a historical curiosity, but a warning, one the Empire tried very hard to bury. The shock of this discovery doesn't merely lie in the idea that the Ninth met its end in battle or natural disaster. The true revelation is that they were consumed by an intelligence or force so alien that even the iron-fisted Roman machine, with all its power, strategy, and ruthlessness, could not adapt. They didn't retreat. They didn't surrender. They were silenced, erased, as though their presence had triggered a defense mechanism in the land itself. And now, with their fate no longer lost to time, the implications echo far beyond ancient history. What the Romans encountered in the wild north may still be there, asleep beneath the peat and stone, waiting. And just as Rome once tried to probe its mystery, so too may modern civilization, armed with satellites instead of standards, be tempted to pry open doors that should have remained closed. The Ninth Legion marched into the unknown. What they found was so far beyond comprehension that even Rome chose oblivion over truth. And now that truth, long hidden, is forcing us to rethink not only the limits of empire, but the boundaries of reality itself. The confirmation of the Ninth Legion's true fate has not only reshaped historical understanding, but it has also revealed deep fractures in how human civilizations interpret unexplained events. What makes this revelation so provocative is not just the sheer loss of nearly 5,000 elite Roman soldiers, but the reasons behind the deliberate suppression of their fate. The empire that built aqueducts, laid down roads stretching thousands of miles, and ruled with an iron grasp over vast territories chose secrecy, silence, and eventually amnesia in the face of something that defied all comprehension. The Ninth Legion became a sacrifice, not for conquest or glory, but to preserve order in a world teetering on the brink of the unknown. Within this context, Roman political strategy begins to look more like a theater of control, where narrative and reality were forced to align. Once the Senate received the final fractured reports from the Ninth's doomed campaign, every trace of the unit was methodically erased from records, statues, and chronicles. In Rome, documents were rewritten to suggest the Legion had been reassigned to the Rhine. In Britannia, local administrators were rotated out swiftly. Even veterans from related auxiliary units were relocated and silenced. The official record pivoted, creating a vacuum where the Ninth's glorious history had once stood. Yet this silence was never perfect. A small cache of journals found in Vindolanda near Hadrian's Wall gives voice to officers who had colleagues in the Ninth. Their writings were never intended for public eyes and were likely hidden during the purges. These journals speak of a growing dread among the legions stationed further south, of strange winds carrying whispers, of dreams shared among soldiers who had never met. Some wrote of feeling a pull northward in their sleep, as though the vanished legion was calling out from beyond some unseen veil. These unsettling experiences were dismissed at the time, but in light of current findings, they may indicate a form of psychological tethering to the region that continues to affect human consciousness, even centuries later. Another overlooked detail now gaining attention is the construction of certain shrines and ritual spaces within Roman forts built post-120 CE. Several of these include architectural elements that deviate sharply from standard Roman religious practices, altar stones carved with spiraling symbols, bronze reliefs depicting entities with abstract multi-faced forms, and inscriptions written backward in what appears to be a purposeful mirror script, all suggest an attempt to appease or ward off forces that had left an indelible impact on Rome's most disciplined soldiers. The empire didn't just try to forget, it tried to contain. Contemporary science has begun engaging with these artifacts using advanced tools unavailable to earlier researchers. Spectral imaging has uncovered layers of hidden inscriptions, while quantum scanning of soil samples from the Cairngorm site shows fluctuations in background radiation inconsistent with any known geological process. The soil appears to have undergone atomic-level restructuring, something that typically requires immense energy inputs, far beyond what Roman technology, or even modern technology in the hands of the military, is known to produce. These anomalies suggest an interaction between matter and some form of non-conventional energy, possibly linked to dimensional or temporal instability. The ripple effect on historical timelines is equally important. With the Ninth Legion's erasure confirmed as intentional and orchestrated, many other historical inconsistencies must now be re-examined. Could other missing legions, whose fates were ambiguously explained, have also stumbled into similar situations? The loss of the Tictiiptu Deotariana in the eastern provinces, or the abrupt disappearance of Legio V Alaudai during the Batavian Rebellion, may warrant fresh scrutiny. The assumption that all military losses were the result of conventional warfare now appears dangerously simplistic. This discovery also compels a reassessment of Roman expansionism. Their obsession with borders, particularly the physical and symbolic importance of frontiers like the Rhine, Danube, and Hadrian's Wall, may not have been solely about political control. These lines could have functioned as psychological defenses, demarcations not just of empire but of perceived reality. When a civilization begins building physical monuments to define where normalcy ends, it's not only defending against enemies, it's defending against fear. One of the most startling developments following this revelation has come from comparative mythologies. Cultures that never encountered Rome describe similar phenomena in the far reaches of their own landscapes. The Ainu people of Japan speak of timeless zones in the mountains. The Dogon tribe in Mali has detailed cosmic maps of celestial bodies they should have had no knowledge of. In northern Scandinavia, Sami legends tell of sky rivers that open briefly to devour entire camps. These stories, long dismissed or romanticized, are now being cross-referenced with satellite anomaly data and high-altitude surveillance logs. Intriguing patterns are emerging, suggesting that the phenomena the Ninth encountered might be a global constant, one that ancient societies perceived in spiritual terms and powerful empires sought to ignore or erase. Modern geopolitics has not been immune to the ripple effects of this revelation. Military analysts are reportedly studying the region with renewed interest, including nations historically less invested in archaeological matters. The British Ministry of Defense has imposed quiet restrictions on flyovers in the Northern Highlands. Independent hikers report strange GPS errors and loss of drone signal strength. A private scientific expedition last year was allegedly recalled under classified circumstances after a member suffered acute psychological trauma. The team's notes, smuggled out later, included descriptions eerily similar to those in the Roman accounts: twins of self, fractured air, and the shadow that doesn't match the light. There is growing concern that, far from being a closed chapter in history, the Ninth Legion's disappearance may be only the first documented event in an ongoing interaction between humanity and this unknown presence. Whether it is a natural force misunderstood by ancient minds, a remnant of something predating civilization, or an active intelligence operating at the edges of our perceptual limits, is still unclear. What is evident is that the Ninth walked directly into a confluence of time, perception, and power they were wholly unequipped to handle. They weren't just soldiers. They became the first human witnesses to a deeper reality and paid the price for it. Implications for modern science are profound. If non-linear time zones or pockets of distorted physics exist on Earth, what does this mean for the standard model of space-time? Are these natural fractures or the scars of something artificial? Some physicists posit the idea of Earth-based wormholes or temporary dimensional bleed-throughs that occur under specific conditions, locations, electromagnetic alignments, or even collective human presence. Others suggest these regions act like biological systems, reacting to intrusion with defensive measures. The Ninth's mission may have triggered such a reaction, with the Force responding not out of malice but self-preservation. This opens deeply unsettling possibilities. If intrusion activates the phenomenon, then rediscovery might reawaken it. The more we study it, the more we risk repeating history, albeit now with satellites, rovers, and AI sensors instead of pylons and shields. Already, experimental drones deployed over the region have failed inexplicably. Their final camera feeds cut out amid flickering lights and sudden white noise. It echoes what Roman scouts described: disturbances in the sky, the vanishing of sound, and inexplicable disorientation. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of this story is the notion that the Ninth is not entirely gone. Fragmentary evidence from geomagnetic studies and irregular seismic readings suggest activity in the deepest parts of the mountain range that does not match any tectonic or volcanic process. Some researchers have gone so far as to theorize that remnants of the Legion, or echoes of them, could persist in some form, trapped in a temporal loop or preserved in a space where time does not function as we know it. This would reframe the Ninth's disappearance not as death but as transformation, a chilling legacy for the most disciplined force of the Roman Empire. These revelations press upon modern humanity an existential question. How do we respond when reality itself resists investigation? The Roman Empire responded with fear, erasure, and boundaries. But we live in an age of data and exploration. The urge to uncover, to know, is stronger than ever. And yet, as the story of the Ninth warns, knowledge comes with a price. Not everything waits to be discovered. Some things lie hidden not out of accident, but out of warning. The Ninth Legion's true fate is no longer just a historical curiosity. It is a harbinger. It invites us to confront the possibility that the universe is stranger than we can fathom, and that our place within it is not assured. The Legion marched to bring Roman order into wild chaos. What they found was a chaos that could not be tamed, one that looked back with equal curiosity, perhaps even disdain. Their story, once thought lost to time, now speaks louder than ever, not in words, but in the eerie silence they left behind. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on the Ninth Legion's fate? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.